Hi, I'm Bob Garrett. Hackensack University Medical Center believes that all citizens need to be informed about the important health issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Hackensack University Health Network, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, Audible.com, Investors Bank, NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, United Water, making the planet sustainable is the best job on earth, and by Cohn Resnick, Accounting, Tax, and Advisory, where forward thinking creates results. Promotional support provided by NJ.com, Small News, Big News, True Jersey, and by Commerce Magazine.
This is One-on-One.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
People like laughing at others, so I don't mind if the other is me.
See, you go right into the character. That's what it is.
I'm bringing families together a half an hour each week. Man, I'm doing something special.
And so I do feel successful.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. I'm here at the Montclair Film Festival, the 4th annual Montclair Film Festival. In fact, to be more specific, I'm here at the Audible Listening Lounge in Montclair. This is part of the film festival. One of the things the film festival does, in addition to over 100 terrific films, is have discussions that take place surrounding these films. And one of the films that is being featured today is a film starring Richard Gere. The film is called Time Out of Mind. The film is all about Richard Gere, who plays a homeless man. And the film talks about homelessness. It talks about hunger. It talks about the fact that too many of us don't see those who, in fact, are homeless. They are an invisible population to many. And so the conversation we had today here in the Audible Lounge is a very spirited dialogue with some experts in the subject. We talk about some of the solutions to homelessness and to hunger. We brought the conversation into our audience as well. And we also do some one-on-one interviews with some terrific people talking about the issues of homelessness and hunger. The film, again, Richard Gere, is called Time Out of Mind. This is the Montclair Film Festival. Really important conversation about really important issues. Check it out. We are here with an extraordinary leader in the state of New Jersey, in this country, Kathleen DiChiara, who is president and CEO of the Community Food Bank in New Jersey, one of the panelists. Kathleen, homelessness, the issue of poverty, and you've been at this for a long time, helping so many people. How bad is it in New Jersey and in this country?
It's worse than when I first began. Which is really depressing because we're doing so much more. I mean, what I was doing out of my car versus 43 million pounds.
That was 1975.
Yes, I was 12. But now the numbers are huge. It is not emergency feeding, it is supplementary feeding. There are over 46 million people in this country who are going hungry.
Let me ask you, what do you think some of the primary causes are for more and more people who are homeless and then going hungry?
Well, let's look in terms of New Jersey. The lack of affordable housing has a lot to do with it. Also, the low wages. I mean, so many people that we're seeing at soup kitchens and living in their cars are working people. And because of the high cost of living in New Jersey, and another reason is federal programs are set on a national poverty level, that what you could get by in Nebraska, perhaps, versus cost of living in New Jersey, means that people just above that standard are ineligible for food stamps, for free and reduced lunches.
So federal policies, you're saying?
Oh, yes, yes, very much federal, state, but the federal ones that impact nutrition programs and benefits for people. Someone in New Jersey with a family of 4 who perhaps earns $30,000 might be ineligible for free and reduced lunches for their children. Those of us that live in New Jersey should know those numbers don't work here.
The Montclair Film Festival, the film that we're talking about, the Richard Gere film, Time Out of Mind. How important is a film like that and a conversation like this with experts in this area to shed light on these issues of homelessness and poverty and people who are struggling and suffering?
I think this is a great community to do that because I think people will go and see it and perhaps open up a little bit around some of the issues that perpetuate poverty, homelessness, hunger.
Do we care enough, Kathleen?
I think so, but what I think is even some very bright people, they're ignorant about what it's really like. I think that there is a hunger beyond physical hunger, and that's hunger on the part of good people to help, but oftentimes they don't know how or where, and they don't really get the issue.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Thanks, Steve.
What did you take away from this discussion we just had with so many terrific people talking about homelessness and hunger?
That it takes the community as a partnership and a network to work together to help to eradicate those two issues. And I think in a town like Montclair, it is possible, as long as we have sort of a coordinating backbone partner to lead the way. I think we can do that.
Why do you think it's gotten worse? Why do you think the issue of homelessness has gotten worse, given that we've known so much about homelessness for such a long time?
I do think that the recent economic events of the last 5 years or more have helped to intensify the issues, and for a lot more people than what one might think of as the typical homeless or hungry person. It now has infiltrated our own circles, our own communities, and it's a call to action.
You know, it's interesting. You talk about those who are in fact homeless, who may not have been homeless before 2008, if you will. Do you think that because those who are in fact homeless are folks who are in our neighborhood, our family members, potentially maybe changing people's attitudes towards those who are in fact homeless and the issue of homelessness?
I do think. I think it's raising awareness. When it hits home or in your circle, at your church, at your synagogue, I think all of a sudden it becomes more real and you feel more compelled potentially to do something about it.
Yeah, one of the issues that came up in our discussion was the fact that housing policies for years have made it more difficult to create affordable housing, to build affordable housing in certain communities. And one of the things I said, I was the moderator of the discussion, one of the things that I said was, all right, let's have a candid discussion about it. Do you believe that most people in New Jersey, and across this country, but New Jersey for now, really want to have quote unquote affordable housing built in their community? And does affordable housing ultimately, for many people, is it a euphemism for poor folks in their community, and do most folks resist that? And people got somewhat uncomfortable with that conversation.
Right. Well, it is an uncomfortable conversation, but
is it a real conversation?
But it's a very, very real conversation. We confront it at Home Corps every single day. But I think the people we're talking about are police officers, or our teachers, our nurses, people who are already in our community.
You mean the folks looking for housing, needing housing?
That's correct. And I think that when we can raise that as an issue, it becomes more real. People can connect and feel a little bit more a part of that, so that the discussion actually becomes perhaps easier to have.
So I believe what you're saying is that there are a lot of misconceptions as to who we're talking about.
That's correct. I mean, again, a family of four earning in Montclair anyway $85,000, $90,000 is actually considered moderate income. And I think people are surprised to hear that, because all of a sudden, oh, geez, that's me. So that makes the conversation easier to have.
Do you think most people who are trying to deal with their own issues, struggling with their own challenges, with their own families, economically and otherwise, do you think most folks have it within themselves to care enough to do something about others who are struggling more with issues of homelessness, housing, and ultimately hunger?
Right. I do think, I suppose I could be called an eternal optimist, but I do think most people have that capacity. But what it's going to take is education and outreach to everybody, to the community at large, to make them understand how it not only impacts those families that potentially they think they're helping, but how it also impacts their own welfare. You could say, in terms of Montclair and our little niche of Essex County, that so goes Newark, so goes Montclair. So it behooves us all to kind of pull together and help each other out.
Final question, the Montclair Film Festival pulling this together. This film, Time Out of Mind, how important?
Very important. I said the other day, it's a sort of a silly example, but Modern Family, I think that television show helped to open up the conversation about marriage equality, frankly, and made it go from not even 10 years ago, 3 years ago, to it's sort of commonplace now. So I think this is media plays a huge role in shaping public opinion.
Steve Adubato here at the Montclair Film Festival. You see a terrific group of people. This is after a panel discussion that we just had on homelessness and hunger, and the conveners of that kind of panel discussion together with the Montclair Film Festival, the Partners for Health Foundation. Kathy Smith is Program Director, Partners for Health Foundation. Good to see you, Kathy. And what is the foundation?
The foundation was formerly the Mountainside Hospital Foundation and became a separate public charity in 2007. And the court said we could start giving out grants to the community in 2008. So we serve 15 communities, 13 in Western Essex and 2 in Passaic.
The goal is?
The goal is to improve health in those 15 communities, collaboratively with partners.
Describe how you do that, because it's so interesting how many different organizations you fund and how they all come together to really make a difference. But for those who aren't aware of exactly what you do, give us an example.
Okay, so some foundations might just write grants. You get proposals in, you give the grants.
That's not you.
We do that, of course, but we also convene people. We bring the organizations together because, like the panelists talked about earlier, resources are scarce today, and we really need to work collaboratively. No one organization can solve these complex social problems that we're faced with today.
It's interesting that Kathy talks about this, because in our panel discussion talking about homelessness and hunger, which is tied to a film at the film festival here in Montclair that is starring Richard Gere, Time Out of Mind, the issue kept coming up. What happens if all these nonprofits are out there trying to make a difference, but they're not coming together? And your foundation really works to try to change that. Tell folks what does happen when not-for-profits, all with good intentions, just are doing their thing on their own.
Well, again, we're talking about solving today complex social problems. Health is a social problem.
Why is health a social problem?
Because if you look at health today, there's a lot of health disparities. Good health, you see more prominently in wealthier populations. In populations who have lower incomes, you see better.
Yeah, they see people struggling who don't have the money.
Right. It's hard to eat healthy if you're on a limited budget. We talked about hunger today, to get fresh vegetables. The foundation gives our local emergency food providers funds specifically just for fresh produce and not just canned salty food that's going to increase their blood pressure.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
We're realizing that in order to solve the problem of homelessness, that we really need to put people in homes. It's a humane thing to do, it's a cost-effective thing to do, and that when people are stably housed, they're then able to work on other issues.
We're here at the Montclair Film Festival. This is the Audible Listening Lounge, and we're here with Deb Ellis, Executive Director of New Jersey Coalition to End Homelessness. We just had a great conversation about homelessness and hunger, following up the film that is being shown at the Montclair Film Festival with Richard Gere called Time Out of Mind. Talk about our discussion.
Well, I think our discussion was really great for showing that there's a will to try to end homelessness and hunger in Montclair and hopefully in the state of New Jersey.
Is there?
I think there is. And one thing that I talked about is that we could do things in a more cost-effective way. So there's 2 reasons that I think we should do this. One is to do the right thing, and that appeals to some people. But for everyone, I think it's in our own economic interest to solve these problems so that we're not spending taxpayer money on things like emergency rooms that can cost $2,000 a day.
It's an interesting conversation because when this issue was raised, I, playing devil's advocate, said, okay, the argument's being made that economically it makes more sense to try to get people into housing so that they're not homeless, so that they're not as much of an economic burden to the rest of us. And I said, can we really engage people in that conversation? And you said it's actually happening, and you talked about an example in Trenton, New Jersey, not because the state government is doing it under the dome in the Capitol, but talk about the city of Trenton, and you talked about the county government helping.
The city and county in Trenton are working really closely with nonprofit agencies to really change the way they do things there. And so instead of focusing on the old treatment first of shelter, then to transition housing, then once you prove yourself worthy to housing, they're trying to rapidly rehouse people as quickly as possible. And they're showing a huge increase in keeping people housed and a lowering of costs. So it's both.
How does that work?
It works because they're working with landlords. So say a family becomes homeless because they can't make a rent because their car broke down, right? And they're living on minimum wage. They don't have the flexibility in the budget that you and I might have. They're going to talk to the landlords to help them. Social workers will help with those payments, because although it may seem like a handout to give rental assistance, it's a lot cheaper to help a family through that short-term crisis and not have them become homeless.
Is there a specific policy from your perspective that actually needs to be changed? One policy. There's no one thing that will fix the issue of homelessness. But name a policy that would greatly improve the situation.
Well, one policy would be raising the minimum wage, because so many people...
How much?
$15 an hour.
15?
Yes, 15, because that's what you need to live. New Jersey is a very expensive state. We're still recovering from the recession. Our unemployment is high. We're one of the 5th most expensive states in which to rent an apartment. So it's just impossible for the American dream for you to work and be able to support your family.
Okay, devil's advocate again. What would you say to those who say in the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, Business and Industry Association, others who say, wait a minute, you want to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. What about all the businesses, particularly small businesses, who won't be able to do that? And if they raise the minimum wage to $15, if the government mandates that they will have to let other people go in order to pay certain people who stay on the payroll $15, and that doesn't help those who just lost their job.
So that may be...
They say that. That's not a hypothetical argument.
They do say that, but we're also seeing other companies that are deciding that this way is not so radical. The way of giving people more salaries so that they can actually make it is what we did in the 1950s and the 1960s. I don't think Eisenhower was a radical president. I don't think Ronald Reagan was radical. We have cut our taxes, and we have a situation where income inequality is major. So the shareholders are making lots of money, the stock market is doing great, and people trying to make a living by working to support their family can't make it.
To what degree do you actually believe? You're saying that it's in our economic self-interest, and you also said it's the right thing to do. To what degree do you believe most folks, because again, we're here at the Audible Listening Lounge, Montclair Film Festival. Folks came here on a beautiful Saturday morning. They chose to be here. I said jokingly in the discussion they're part of the choir, meaning they chose to be in quote-unquote church on a Saturday morning. Outside of this room in Montclair at the film festival, how many folks you actually think folks actually say, I really care about these issues of homelessness, hunger, and I want to be part of the solution? Forget about the economics for themselves, but they actually want to help other people.
Well, I want to go back to the cost effectiveness. So in Salt Lake City, they have reduced homelessness by 75%. Salt Lake City is not your bastion of progressivism like Montclair. It's Mormon, it's Republican, and they have decided that this is the right thing to do and the cost-effective thing to do.
Respectively, Utah is not New Jersey.
And it isn't. This can work everywhere. That's what I'm saying.
We have the heart to do this?
I think we do. And we have the business sense to do it.
We need to do this.
We need to do it.
And if we don't?
We're going to see more homelessness and more hunger.
This is an absolute necessity. It's not simply a nice thing to do, is it?
That's what I believe. I don't think it improves our community to have people who are homeless wandering the streets and going to hunger places. I think that we want to live in a place where everyone can live an adequate life.
Michelle, talk to us about your takeaway from the panel discussion we just had about these important issues in connection with the film Time Out of Mind with Richard Gere.
This was a great opportunity for us as service providers to, really explain the population that we serve, we serve homeless, plus we do a lot of homeless prevention. And, I think there are a lot of stereotypes about who the homeless are.
Who are they?
They're anybody. It can be anybody. We're in the suburban community of Montclair. People think of it as an affluent community. But the reality is there are people in need here. The cost of living is very high. And that is true throughout Essex County.
Do you think, Michelle, most people think, it's not me, it's not my neighbor, it's no one in my family, it's somebody who's really poor and really struggling, and definitely no one I know?
Oh, absolutely. In the 30 years that we've been running Cornerstone House Emergency Shelter right here in Montclair, we've served people from all communities throughout Essex County: Montclair, Bloomfield, West Caldwell, Fairfield, Roseland.
These are middle-class communities.
Livingston, they absolutely are. They are communities that you would never look at and say, oh, poor people live there, people with problems live there. But the reality is that, we could all be a paycheck away from homelessness, from some severe emergency, financial emergency, a crisis in the family, a health crisis. We all have people in our families that have issues, and so none of us is exempt from these problems.
What is the message for the rest of us in terms of, okay, you had this discussion about homelessness, had a discussion about hunger. For folks who say they want to be helpful, what can they do?
They can reach out to a number of social service agencies.
They also can volunteer at the Salvation Army.
They can always volunteer at the Salvation Army. Thanksgiving, we have a great big dinner.
Great group of people there.
Thank you. But we serve meals throughout the year. We have a lunch program 3 days a week. We have a drop-in center program that we've opened in the last 5 years where we provide day shelter for people, homeless people. We provide educational programs. We provide access to mental health resources, medical resources, dental resources. We're starting some job training, life skills seminars.
And the average person can help just by volunteering.
Volunteering, financial support, we have to pay our staff, we have to pay for overhead. And so, there are a variety of ways. Their own personal resources, time and talents is great, anything they can offer to help stimulate creativity for our people, just fun. Homeless people are so devastated by their situation. You think of homeless people, they may be lazy, they've got a lot of time on their hands, but the reality is that the situation is so overwhelming that there's no time for creativity. There's no time for, just fun. And so, having a sensitivity to people. I think that we had a great group of people here. We had some great questions. I think that we've created an awareness, and I would hope that the people here can take that out into the community and help educate. I mean, education is key to getting people to understand. And then, the more people that understand, the more people can have an impact with legislation that will help benefit this population. And, housing is a right. It's not a privilege, and we all deserve a roof over our heads.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Ann Mernon is the director of Tony's Kitchen at St. Luke's Church in Montclair. Ann, the discussion we just had on homelessness and hunger, your biggest takeaway?
I just think that we're at a different moment right now in Montclair. We're ready to talk about this in a serious way. I think the foundation has been laid for us to be more collaborative and sharing our resources and our expertises in making some tangible progress on the issue.
Tell folks about the work that you and your colleagues do at your organization.
So Tony's Kitchen really has two main missions. One is our on-site meal program, where we feed anyone who walks through our doors who's hungry. And then we use that moment of having a shared meal to also try and connect with other services. We invite community partners on site to provide medical care, mental health services, food stamps, things like that. So that's historically been our core mission. Recently, an equally large mission of ours has been to take that model and basically reverse it. So where we use food to gather and then connect to services at Tony's Kitchen, we now look at where low-income families are gathering, where we know that there is food need, and we try and connect food in ways that reinforce those other missions. So tutoring programs, after-school programs, brother-to-brother, sister-to-sister, those types of things.
Who are the people you serve?
It's a very diverse community. I think that's one of the things that the public isn't quite aware of.
Who do we think you serve, and who do you actually serve?
Okay, so we think that we serve the traditional soup kitchen population, which would be people with mental health issues, substance abuse, chronically homeless individuals. Who we actually serve are actually our two biggest populations on site that are growing rapidly are senior citizens, been really struggling since the recession, and the working poor. And then in the community, I think there's tremendous unmet food need within families.
Within families?
Yes, within families. So, Montclair is a beautiful town. It's lovely and just a wealth of resources here, and we sometimes don't see that there are significant food needs within families in Montclair. So we're beginning to really understand that and try and experiment with ways to connect food with families in ways that feels respectful and is integrated into their daily lives.
Final question. How important is a discussion like this, a film like this, a conversation like this about these issues of homelessness and hunger?
Well, I think the fact that we're having this discussion in the middle of the film festival, right, this great, uplifting, terrific moment, speaks to the values of our town. And that we're willing to have this conversation now. And
pretty rare.
It is rare, and I think it's something that has tremendous opportunity. The fact that Richard Gere took time to make a film like this and to talk about what it feels like to be homeless and their perceptions of homelessness, it just raises the dialogue, and all it can do is bring us to a better place in terms of solving problems.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Hackensack University Health Network, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, Audible.com, Investors Bank, NJIT, United Water, and by Cone Resnick. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
There is a place that pushes beyond traditional thinking to take medicine further than ever before, where science and creativity work together to give heart and cancer patients new possibilities, and researchers discover options for children who once had none. A place that proves every day that impossible is just an opinion. Hackensack University Medical Center, where medicine meets innovation.